It is episode, it's either 4 or 5 of my new YouTube show. I'm kind of on hiatus with the radio thing for a few weeks at least. I'm not quite sure when things, there is no timeline for what is going on right now. So we'll see when I'm able to get back in the building and create some radio. But at the time being, I'm doing some podcasting, doing some recording from home. Right now, I have Vince Averill from Los Angeles, California. He is a podcaster. He's either retired or he's on furlough from comedy. Are you a comedian still? Are you still doing live comedy?
Sure.
Nice.
Sure.
And then also he's a singer for a hardcore band. So We Watch Wrestling, Cross Control, and also a comedian. How you doing, Vince?
Good, man. Thanks very much for having me on here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So first off, I got to ask you, how are you staying busy? What are you doing to keep you from going crazy?
Well, just doing a lot of cleaning, doing a lot of drinking,
Nice.
Still podcasting.
Yep.
Still working on some new cross control stuff, and just generally trying not to think about the actual outside world as best as possible.
Fair enough, man. You were probably, like a lot of wrestling fans, going to be down in Tampa this weekend. Was that correct?
Yeah, man, we were going down. We were going to do our, live show for We Watch Wrestling like we always do. We had tickets for all the shows. We were, it's Christmas for wrestling fans, and getting to go is incredible. So yeah, it's a bit of a bummer. Obviously, there are bigger bummers happening, so you got to keep it in perspective. But yeah, we for sure were looking forward to being in Tampa right now.
Yeah, and I mean, the WWE is going to be fine. Like, they will continue to do business. AEW is probably going to be fine, but you got to think about all those other, like, independent companies that are just like, dude, they were flying people like Great Muta, flying people like all the way over from Japan. I'm sure tons of tickets were, like, just the financial burden is insane. So if you have means to, support on either a promotion or a wrestler, now would be a good time to do so.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you can buy a WWE shirt anytime. I think right now is the time to try to help some of these guys, because between, some of the deposits for the buildings and just people, men and women who work each weekend, and if they don't work, they don't get paid, just like a lot of other people in a lot of other industries. But you try to help where you can right now, because we are all in this together, and it's real messed up.
So let's talk a little bit about what is now, I'm calling it the empty arena era. We've talked about the attitude era. We've talked about the glory period of the golden era of WWF. I think they would call it now the empty arena era. If you're like me, it's kind of hard to watch.
Yeah, no, it's very hard to watch. I think like a lot of other stuff right now, Dynamite AEW seems to be doing the most watchable version somehow.
Yeah.
But it's like, I was saying this week on our show, like, once Mania is done, they should just start doing best ofs until they can come back, and then start back with a clean slate, because these shows it was already pretty arduous to watch Raw, in my opinion, but this shit is now just like, between them showing a match from, a year ago or whatever, and then the stuff that happens in the empty room. I'm wholly curious about Mania this weekend and what that's going to be like. It's going to be awkward.
I'm assuming, being like the huge wrestling, fanatic lifetime. I mean, you were at WrestleMania 3. I listen to the podcast every week. So you are the encyclopedia of wrestling. I'm assuming you're going to watch everything this weekend, all the WrestleMania. It's going to be hard, but
it's my duty, man. But know that there are going to be times when I got to pick the phone up, because I can't see just being, eyes locked on whatever 8 hours or whatever they're planning to dole out over the 2 days. When's the last time I saw you? In New Orleans? Was that Mania in New Orleans? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it was at New Orleans, and I think it was, we took a picture together at Spring Break. I actually didn't make it through the entire thing because we had to wake up in the morning, and my friend Steve had to do some Ring of Honor interviews. We didn't get to make it till like the end, where Sasuke was doing the sing-along, doing the karaoke.
Yeah, we were out of there too, because, as you're aware, when we go to Mania, like, we're doing maybe 4 shows a day, just like breakneck. And so by the time like Spring Break got going, we were just fucking wasted, and not wasted in like a drunk way, at least Matt, but but needing some sleep, you know?
Yeah, man. And I think, what are your thoughts about, so everyone likes to kind of make WrestleMania their vacation. And for me personally, like if I'm able to go, it's like, you get out of town. What's it going to be like when it's in your backyard next year? Are you looking forward to it? Or are you kind of like, man, I kind of want to get out of town? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, it is a bit of a double-edged sword because I do like to travel to places for it and just be like, my wife is here and stuff, and it's hard to like, when you can go and leave town, then that's it. You're there and that's your focus and that's what you're doing nonstop, and that's what I like. But it'll be cool to have it here, and we're talking about different ways to sort of we have been kicking around the idea of getting a giant Airbnb and then having some of the listeners come and stay. But we'll figure out a way to make it work. It'll be cool to be in my own bed, I guess. But it will be strange in that way that I won't be in another city where I can just like lock in,
You know that if we all get an Airbnb together and it's a bunch of listeners, we're all just going to be like staring at you the whole time. Like, hey, tell us a joke. Hey, we'll expect you guys to be on the whole time. We'll be like, hey, be funny.
Yeah. Well, as long as I can make sure that I won't get sued if you like break your leg sliding down the banister or something. That's the thing I'm trying to work through right now, to make sure that we can do it and have fun and make sure that, I'm not on the hook for anything. The coffee table gets broken.
A release form to sign when you enter the premises that We Watch Wrestling LLC is not responsible for any broken bones.
Yeah. Something to that effect for sure.
So last night, I got to watch the New Jack Dark Side of the Ring. Did you get a chance to watch that one?
You know what? I watched the first 45 minutes and stopped. Okay. It was stuff that I knew, but I was just like, I've always, like they said, it's like, for me, New Jack might be Hulk Hogan territory of being full of shit. And after you recount a few times of him just like taking liberties with people and stuff like that, I was just like, all right, I'll catch this other 15 minutes later. It just kind of bummed me out. Like I wasn't, it's weird to say because like the Benoit one was interesting and everything, but somehow New Jack, just the way he, goes about it, I was just like, I kind of felt like, fuck this guy.
He definitely doesn't apologize. He definitely is just like, nah, man, I was doing lots of blow. I still do lots of blow. Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah, which would indicate that maybe it's not a work, right? When it's like, oh, well, did he really like try to kill Vic Grimes when, it's like, I don't know, but does it matter? Because it's not like he wasn't working with him at that point. It doesn't seem like, but who knows, I
guess. So the Benoit one, that was, for me personally, that was like a hard watch. It was incredible. Like they do such a good job with that, but it's a very difficult and like very sad and real and raw, but I did like that they did give proper kind of homage, and they gave proper time to like the victims and of it, because that was the real tragedy of it all. So
no, they certainly handled it very well, I thought. They by like you say, whatever caused him to do what he did, whether it was brain damage or whatever else, the fact remains that the victims are the victims, and them spending a lot of time on that piece, I thought, was what made it very worthwhile instead of just rehashing this story that's otherwise kind of scandalous or whatever.
For sure. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about so your band. Obviously, you're in a hardcore band called Cross Control, and if you're a fan of you're a fan of My Favorite Murder too, but you would know Vince from being on tour. But if you're a fan of We Watch Wrestling, you would know that his band actually is the opening intro. That is not Cross Control, but what band was that?
That was a band called Beautiful New that I was in back in like maybe the very early 2000s or something.
And then so Cross Control is your new thing, and you guys are on New Age Records. Is that right?
That's right. And our 7-inch that came out at the end of last year is still available on at least one of the colors. That's awesome. newagerecords.net. 6 songs, pretty straight up old school hardcore. I'd like to think that, we do our own version of it, and certainly the lyrics are not as run of the mill, but it's hardcore, man, and we're proud of it.
So it's pretty cool that you're on this like New Age Records, man. That's like an iconic 90s record label, dude. Like some of the best 90s hardcore. How did that come about? Do you know people with New Age, or did they approach you?
So Mike Hartsfield, who runs New Age, we've sort of known each other tertiarily over the years because, I was in 90s hardcore in Detroit and I had a little label and this and that. I think we sort of knew of each other more than anything else. And then him and his family are big fans of My Favorite Murder. So we reconnected with me sort of hooking him up with some tickets and reconnected over that. So then when we went in and did these songs, I was just like sending them to people and I was like, hey man, check these out. Not really even, honestly, I didn't send them there thinking like, oh, he's going to just like want to do it. But that's exactly what happened. And so it just worked out that he was into it and that he had a spot in the calendar. And because trust, dude, I am very stoked to be on New Age because it is a seminal label,
That's sick, man. And you just kind of teased it out that you did a label up in Detroit. And so my question for you is like, first off, let's start like on step one there. Like growing up, what was the first album, first CD, tape, vinyl, whatever, first one that you actually purchased on your own, not given to you by a cooler older brother or like a present? What was the first thing you actually purchased at the store?
Right. So purchased in as much as like my brother and I were 3 years apart, we were given money, but we went, together and we split. We had Quiet Riot, Metal Health, and Def Leppard, Pyromania, those two tapes.
Yeah.
Shortly thereafter, Weird Al 3D. But then the first tape that I went myself and purchased was Phil Collins' No Jacket Required.
Okay, nice, dude. And then what brought you to hardcore? Like, what was the gateway to aggressive underground hardcore metal and punk and that crazy shit we call hardcore?
Yeah, so from there, pretty quickly by the end of elementary school, I'm into like Zeppelin and Pink Floyd and shit like that. Yeah. And my neighbor across the street, who was the same age as my brother, was like into cool stuff. The reason that I have the sense of humor I do, the fact that I didn't turn out to just be a dork, I believe.
Yeah.
He was like telling me about this and that, and he had been going to shows. But then I don't remember, someone gave a tape to me that was one side, a pretty freshly out Gorilla Biscuits Start Today.
Nice.
And then the other side was Misfits.
Oh, cool.
And so me and my buddy, who were pretty inseparable at the time, who then started my first label together that put out the Ottawa Jihad split LP, we sort of like, I was like, the Gorilla Biscuits is the one that speaks to me. And he was sort of more into the Misfits. I've come around and, I have appreciation for all of it. So then from that point, I sort of, Gorilla Biscuits, Minor Threat, and I went down that road with straight edge for a long time. But yeah.
And then, so what was the label called?
The very first label was called Abiology. We took the money from our graduation parties from high school. And at the time, there was a band called Current that some people might remember. And some of those guys had formed a band called Ottawa, which was, do you know this band or record at all?
I don't know Ottawa, but I think when I was talking to Tom from Indecision, he mentioned something about a release that you put out, and I think I did a little deep dive, and it may have been that one that I checked out. Either that or it was Current, but I can't remember.
Yeah. So Ottawa was this like kind of borderline grindcore, but fast dual vocals, very cool. They had this demo that had like, in those days, dude, if you got a good review in MRR, it was insane. So we put this record out. It was one side them, one side Jihad, and I think all in all, probably at this point, there's maybe been at least 4,000 copies of it.
Holy shit!
And so then from that point, him and his name's Kane. He's in a band called Gray Cell right now with some of the guys from Citizens of the Rest out of Philly. But cool. We sort of just began to diverge in what we were into, and so I then started Capsule Records. Put out the first grade, and Such as Progress LP that then has gone on to be put out by several other people.
But you said you put out the first grade record?
Yeah.
Wow. Like the Canadian kind of melodic hardcore pop punk?
Yeah, it was the thing that was sort of like hot at the time that was sort of like melodic and then would go into screams, kind of like back and forth.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, so I put that out, but that was kind of short-lived because I did 1,000 or something, and then there was a disagreement about repressing or this or that. And so they pretty quickly took the record to Second Nature or somebody else. But then I just did Capsule Records for a while there, did a bunch of other bands. And and once it became a job, I was like, I'm out.
But Capsule Records is still a thing.
Fair enough. Yes.
You put out comedy records. You put out Matt McCarthy Wrestling Fans 7-inch, and so it's still alive in some form, correct?
Yeah, I have a new record. There's a bunch in my garage. This pandemic hasn't really helped sales of Joe DeRosa, who people may know. He was on Better Call Saul. He's got a bunch of Comedy Central specials and stuff.
Yeah.
But he has a record called "I Go to Atlanta All the Time" that I pressed on double vinyl. A beautiful layout done by Barry the Art Guy up there in the Northwest, and that record's still available at capsulerecords.limitedrun.com if somebody is looking to pass the time during their quarantine.
Dude, comedy records are killer. I know that there was a guy for a time there who was putting out like cassette tapes of wrestling promos. Like he put together like a Dusty Rhodes and like a Roddy Piper thing. I was like, that is so fucking cool. You'd never think about that, but comedy records, promo CD, wrestling promo records. It's cool. It's definitely out of the box thinking, but the Matt McCarthy, he is someone that you do podcasting with for We Watch Wrestling. And I just wanted to send appreciation out to Matt McCarthy because I'll be watching a random television show or I'll be watching commercials and his face pops up. Like he's all over the place. So how did you meet Matt McCarthy?
So Matty, him and I were both in New York coming up, and we were both on the same episode of a show that used to be on Comedy Central called Live at Gotham.
Okay, yeah, I remember that show.
So we had sort of known each other from around. He had maybe even I was running a weekly show, and I think we sort of, we knew each other. Hey, what's up? Doing each other's shows and this and that, but didn't really like get down. And then, tape and TV, you got to be there all day. So him and I are sitting around, and finally I was like, he say it to me or I say it to them? It's funny, I can't remember now. But someone was like, hey, man, I heard you're into wrestling. And it was like, oh, yeah. And so I was like, you should come over to my house for WrestleMania because it was like whenever we were taping, it was within like a couple weeks before Mania.
Yeah.
And the rest is history. Then it was like he was at my house every week. We started going to indie shows together, and it's funny. We were just talking about we haven't since 2008. We've only missed one Mania together, which was when he worked for WWE in 2012. Oh, wow. So this is the second one in like a decade or whatever, or more, 12 years that we'll have not been able to sit in the same room or in the same stadium and watch it.
So when he got that job at WWE, because he was a writer for quite a while there with WWE, what was your reaction, man? Like, I bet you were super pumped for him, and like, what was that like?
I was very stoked for him. I loved hearing everything that was going on. I actually was up. I went for the same job because we found out about it together. Yeah. And it wasn't like me versus him, but I didn't end up working there, obviously. But it was great, and it was interesting, because a lot of guys get chewed up there, and Maddie had a similar experience, beating your head against the wall, and it's known what happens to folks up there who have any sort of individuality. So, but it was cool, and then he finished up and moved out to LA, and I quickly followed, and then the podcast started.
Knowing what you know now, what would it take for you to take a job as a writer for WWE?
Like today?
Yeah, what would it take?
It ain't happening. There's no fucking way, man. I'm quite content. There was there's a lot of time when I was like, fuck, man, I wish I could work there, and then when I wasn't able to, I really wanted to. As I sit here today, there's no reason for me to ever put myself in that position.
It seems like a dream job for like a time there, but then as you like listen to enough shoot interviews, listen to We Watch Wrestling podcast, listen to anything with what's his name, Zombie Princess, what's his name?
Richards, Dave, no. right?
He was the writer that did the Too Sweet with the Young Bucks and got fired.
Yes. Jimmy Jacobs.
Yes. Listen to him. Anyone that's really had. I mean, there's a barrage of people that have just had like insane experiences, and I love hearing those. But I don't think that would be a job for me. I think I would certainly. I like being a fan. I like being a fan, and just kind of watching from the outside. There's something to be said about that. So yeah, you guys started the podcast, and tell me a little bit about podcasting, because you guys started the podcast got to be at least like 6, 7, 8 years ago or something?
Yeah, I think it's this year's 7. This summer will be 7 years, yeah.
Well, now everyone has a podcast. There's, I mean, a million, probably 7 million podcasts out there. What was your inspiration, guys? Because that was kind of the first wave of wrestling podcasts. And there was certainly, I don't think Stone Cold had one at that time or anything like that. You guys were within the first wave. Colt Cabana maybe had one, but what was your inspiration?
For sure, Colt did. Well, I mean, straight up, I think, at that time it was, already kind of percolating for comics to try to figure it out. And Tom Sibley, who's no longer on the show, him and Matt, before I got to town, were already kind of hanging, and he was like, I want to start a podcast with you, to Matt. And Matt said, well, the only thing I think I could talk about once a week is wrestling. And then to his credit, he was like, and I don't want to do it unless Vince is on. As I've said to them and others before, like initially I was like, I don't think I need to do this. Like, I don't understand why anyone would give a shit. And my wife, Georgia, who now has one of the biggest podcasts in the world, at the time had a previous podcast. So she was already doing it. And I think she was probably a little bit like, you should do it. It's like, it's a thing, whatever, try it. And so I did. And then I've just never looked back. But it was really Tom Sibley is the reason that the podcast ever happened, at least in this form.
And so it wasn't kayfabe. Like, from what I understand, he wasn't a fan of wrestling when you guys first started, right? That was the whole gimmick. It was like two guys. One was a writer for WWE. One's a super fan, knows everything about wrestling, and then one guy who doesn't know anything about it. What was that like, watching wrestling with someone who had no knowledge of it? Was that kind of refreshing to you?
It was cool, and it definitely made the show interesting and different, and allowed people in who didn't know wrestling could sit there, because when they didn't know what was going on, we very quickly explained it for Tom. And it was good until, as we went along, I think Tom realized he actually didn't like it.
Fair enough, yeah.
And so then it ran its course, and Tom moved on, But when it was early on, and he was still, bright-eyed and wanted to know and liked it, it was very fun, and I thought it brought a different twist to the whole thing.
So when he left, that was like a point of which, I'm like deep into the We Watch Wrestling world, dude. I listen every week, and there was like a cliffhanger, like, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna keep going? And you guys almost tease, like, who knows? So was there an actual point? Like, bring me into that time. Like, did you guys ever consider just like, okay, this is done, or was there ever really any question about whether you guys wanted to keep it going? Because I mean, it's going better than ever these days, it seems like.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think it truly, we didn't know. Like, it came, we had done some shows in Philly and Boston, and literally we're like in the airport in Boston, we're going to fly home, and Sibley is like, yo, just so you know, I'm done. As of the end of the year or whatever. So there's like 2 more shows or something.
Yeah.
And so we had, it was a little bit of a blind side, but that's what it is. It'd be, when someone's done, they're done, and that's cool. But so Matt and I were sort of like, what do we do here? Cause I was actually literally talking to Tom today, because he loves Corey Graves era Misfits. And I'm like,
you mean Michael Graves?
I don't care if Corey Graves, Michael Graves, yes. Corey Graves is But Michael Graves, whether he's a great singer or not, it doesn't matter to me. Like, a band like the Misfits or whoever, it's like, when someone goes, you end the band or you rename it or whatever. So like, I think I was sort of coming at it from that direction. Like, well, it's not that anymore. So what do we do? And then Matt's like, well, I still want to talk about wrestling. We're going to still talk about wrestling. We should just record it. So we ultimately decided, yeah, let's just keep going. But there certainly was like a little bit of time where we were like sort of figuring out, like, do we still do this? What is it? Whatever, you know. But I think we made the right choice, and it seems like, yeah, I feel like it's still going good.
And so if you're a fan of wrestling and you are watching this and you don't subscribe to the We Watch Wrestling podcast, you certainly should. And the thing about them is they talk about current things, but they also have kind of like a thorough line thread of like, they have like inside jokes that you got to start at episode 1. So if you start, issue 1. So if you start at issue 1 and you just go and you just deep dive, dude, you'll get their humor, you'll get their jokes, and you'll also hear the saga of young Tom, and then as they move on, and you'll get up to speed with it. So yeah, man, good. It's good shit. I love it. I'm actually about to listen to the new issue today. But
I'm excited because we finally figured out how to use a Zoom to record. So I'm no longer, the last couple of weeks I had been on a phone. Yeah. And it sounded like I was in a fucking bathroom on the Russian space station. But now we're on equal footing, and the show finally back to sounding good this week.
That's awesome. You are also kind of a major player in the My Favorite Murder podcast. So your wife, Georgia, she does one of the biggest podcasts in the world, My Favorite Murder. And what's it like seeing her jump into it and then it like blow up? Like, was there a time, like looking back, like where you guys like looked at the numbers and were like, oh fuck, this is bigger than we thought?
Well, I mean, it's kind of been a bunch of oh wow moments for like the last 3 or 4 years or whatever it's been, and yeah, it happened very quickly, but then things just continued to have, you know, grown, and the touring has gotten more extensive, and it's very lucky for me especially. But once they started touring, when I ran Capsule Records, you know, I effectively did some tour managing for some of the bands, right? Like did some things here and there. And thankfully they're also not like a, you know, they don't have a giant backline, right? They just have the stuff they use on stage, but there's still some technical. So, but it allowed me to become the tour manager without it being like, well, they're just letting the husband, you know, do a job. Like I actually had the skills, but so being able to go with them on the road and just see, you know, we've been to Australia, Europe twice, all over the States a couple times. And once this thing's over, hopefully some more shows, but it's just been insane, you know. They wrote a book, and it just feels like everyone is very grateful and know that this is one of those things. It's not like they didn't put in work or do other things to put themselves in a position, but shit like this happens, and it's really like a lightning bolt, and everyone's just trying to ride it. But it's been amazing for sure.
That's amazing, man. And some of the places you guys have visited, and just like it's a mind blowing, man. I also love the My Favorite Murder podcast. I'm a murderino for sure, proud murderino. So yeah, so let's finish things up here and talk a little bit more about Cross Control. So 2020, obviously, you know, the timeline's a little fucky right now. Who knows what's going to go on? But you guys, you said that you're busy working on some more stuff with Cross Control. What are some goals, and what can we expect from your hardcore band Cross Control?
Yeah, so right before all this, we had gone in and recorded a couple songs. We have a batch of songs, but we've decided this time we're just going to record them sort of piecemeal rather than try to go in and do it all at once. Yeah. So we're not exactly sure what we're going to do yet, like whether it'll be another 7-inch or an LP or whatever, but here before too long, we're gonna premiere one of the songs that we just did, in hopes to just sort of, well, one, it ends up that the lyrics are a little apropos, but also just to let people know we're still alive, and to maybe let people know that we exist if you didn't know, and you can still get the first record. So I don't know, we just want to play more shows if those things ever happen again, and record another or put out another collection of songs in whatever form.
That's awesome, man. Well, I'm looking forward to that, and I'll definitely keep my I'll subscribe to the Cross Control, you know, Spotify and whatnot. How can we promote support your band? Where are you guys you know, available and whatnot?
We're on Bandcamp.
Bandcamp's the way to do it.
Yeah, Bandcamp is also where that new track is going to land. Let me just make sure I know, because there's probably, I mean, we were pretty careful to make sure there was only one Cross control, but you never know what's going on out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just Cross Control on Bandcamp, and that's a great place to check us out. Yeah, and We Watch Wrestling Podcast on all social medias, and Vince.Averill on Instagram, Vince Averill on Twitter.
Awesome, man. Well, I have 2 more questions before we go. One question. I know you're a shoe sneakerhead. How many pairs of sneakers do you have?
I actually have sort of slimmed down over the years, and I now have, I just get the ones I really, really need. So I think probably right now I maybe have like only 30 pair.
Okay.
It's down, which I know is crazy sounding to some people, but as far as people who collect shoes, it's not that big of a deal, but yeah.
I just interviewed my friend Brian. He works at a streetwear company in New York City called Concepts, and the back line.
Love that store.
Yeah, so like the entire background of the interview, it was just Nikes. Just I was like, that's awesome. Vince, okay, Respect. Last question. What are 4 albums that changed your life?
4 albums that changed my life. Led Zeppelin 2, the Minor Threat discography.
Yeah.
Ice Cube, America's Most Wanted.
Nice.
And Max Romeo, Open the Iron Gate. I
don't know that one. What is that?
It's a reggae. Well, it's a collection of that guy, but it's got all the bangers you need. And I don't even I'm not even a super reggae guy, but that sort of that album opened me up to the possibilities of a lot of other music. So I got to put that one on the 4.
Awesome, man. Dude, thank you so much for taking the time, man. I know you're a busy dude. Definitely support We Watch Wrestling Podcast. Support Cross Control, his hardcore band. Check out Matt McCarthy's comedy. Check out My Favorite Murder. All this shit. Just support Vince Averill. Good dude. Hopefully we'll be able to see you at a WrestleMania in the years to come. Maybe next year. Who knows if the world is back to normal next year.
You got to hope. Thank you so much, man. And I'll talk to you soon. I really appreciate it.
Stay safe, stay home, stay washing your hands. Peace, dude.
Late.